We have one more guy. He has gotten a pretty hard challenge from us. We asked him to sum up everything and make a case for why innovation is very important. But he's a serial entrepreneur. Millions of people use his products, so I think he'll do fine.
All right, thank you. There's my new thing. We also did a company called Issuu. But unlike everyone else on stage, I don't get to talk about me, which is a relief, because that's what we talk about as entrepreneurs all the time. But I've never done closing remarks here, so I really believe in what I said, getting out of the comfort zone and doing something else. Plus, I don't recall actually, signing up for this. But yeah, no, he's getting on stage. He's been checking on me 10 times a day. You do remember you're going to do this thing, right? And I have notes right here. But the best closing remarks I ever saw at a conference was actually Reboot, which Thomas here did for 11 times. And it was Bruce Sterling, I was a big fan back in the 80s when cyberpunk and all that rage was the big shit. And suddenly there he was, totally tearing down Thomas's beautiful conference. And he talked about Reboot number 11. That was number 11 in the series. I think that was the last one. I don't know if that was why, but he said, you've been rebooting 11 times, so now maybe you need to do something else. But he talked about two things, which was, where's the world heading? And I'm just going to mention one of the things that really stuck with me. He talked about dark euphoria, and this is some years ago, so I think dark euphoria is here today, in this room, in this economy. And his definition of dark euphoria was, you're falling in the darkness towards the ground with 10,000 kilometers an hour, and then suddenly you realize the ground is not there. That's probably the most scary image I've ever had, right? So that's a good opening. But it also led me to another quote of Steve Plank that you all know, and I actually got to meet Steve in his house. I don't know if you call it a house, it's more like a, I don't know, mansion, or like 5 mansions all pieced together, just south of San Francisco. And he quoted Emerson for saying, when it's darkest, men see stars. I think that's probably the most beautiful things, and that actually made me stop the other startup I was doing, because I've been doing it for 5 years, and decided to start something new. And today is concluding a 10 days road trip that I've done in the Nordic region, because I've made a conscious choice to build out of the Nordic region, and I just love it. So the past 10 days, I've been on 7 flights in 6 major European cities for 6 startup events. Anything from Red Herring to this beautiful events, to Startup Weekend, to what were the others? I met policymakers in Stockholm, and I learned so many great things. And actually, a round trip like this is almost like a trip to Silicon Valley and back. So I would really encourage you to start mingling. Some of the things I learned. For instance, did you know that in Sweden, when you invite a foreign worker to join your company, the spouse of that worker gets to work inside the country of Sweden? That's beautiful, right? That's socialistic, that's awesome. Did you also know that in Estonia, I actually didn't know much about Estonia either, but apparently they consider themselves kind of Nordic, which is, I guess, is a sort of a shoulder pad for us. But the head of the digital policy maker there is a guy called Tavi, and he founded a company when he was 20, and 13 years later, that was last October, he sold it, and he doesn't have to work again. And apparently he's not able to work in a commercial setting, so he decided to become a policymaker. I think that's awesome. I think every country should have someone like him. He's buying me lunch next week, so he asked me to say this, but we need more practitioners out there. So these are just some of the things I didn't know about the Nordic scene. And now, I've been following, obviously the big, London, Copenhagen, where I live, Stockholm, I've often wondering about what's going on in Norway, and this is actually the first time I had to come here, the first chance I had to come here. And you know, to me, the Norwegians is always, and this is just judging, you know, from the outside. How many here is from Norway? Oh, all right, shit. But to me, you're almost like the dwarfs of Lord of the Rings, right? You camp in the mountains, you dig for gold, and you just keep digging. And it's wonderful, you struck oil. But it's also like, you know, almost like a curse. And I heard someone told me that you found more oil recently, enough to last another 50 years. I think that's a death sentence. If you look at, you know, the whole global market, you know, how much energy comes from hunger, from the ability or the ambition to change something. And so, I mean, we're all guilty in the Nordic regions. I mean, what I also learned is that, you know, we have the best education, the best infrastructure, the highest adoption of new technology, the most equality of gender, all this good shit, right? It's like a silver spoon, someone just gave it to us. But we need to think outside of our little states, our little small countries, and think about the Nordics as a region. So I've heard like 20 times the past 24 hours, people saying, so what's the hot startup in Copenhagen? What's the hot startup in, you know, Norway or, you know, whatever, right? And it's almost like it's a competition, right? And it's not a competition. I actually used to study literature. How many here is from Iceland? There was one here before, she probably skipped out. But I studied Icelandic sagas, and I want to talk a little bit about ghosts, because I think there's a lot of ghosts in our country. The idea of a ghost is apparently if someone from your clan, and now we're back in the Icelandic sagas, if someone is murdered, you actually hang his body inside the living room, with us, you know, from the ceiling until he's avenged, right? This is a true story. This is where the concept of a ghost comes from. You know, and back in history, we've all had, you know, our forefathers were battling each other, killing each other, doing terrible things. But we need to stop competing against each other. It's not about having the coolest startups. It's about being better than China, about being better than the US, and finding out what's unique for us. And I think finally it's starting to come together. And it's beautiful. So let's do that. So another thing I've been thinking about is that there's this beautiful anecdote when the lead developer of Google+, after he shipped a new product, quits, leaves for Microsoft for whatever reason, I don't know. But he has many reasons, but one of them is beautiful, is that, so he showed the new product to his daughter, and she said, wow, look at all the new features, isn't it cool? You know, you could do whatever. He said, yeah, Dad, that's cool, but you know, all the people, that's what's cool, and they're on Facebook, right? And me coming out of, you know, humanities, which is the study of humanity, I guess, how can I possibly run a tech startup? And the only reasons I could come up with is not really about the technology, it's what the technology enables us to do. You know, historically, culture and technology has been like two separate things, but now technology is culture. It's even the foundation of culture. We talk about supercomputers, but it's not really about that. It's about having technology enable us to be superhuman. That's what we talk about in my new company. How can I enable someone to attend any conference in the world? That's big. It's also very hard, but you know, we'll try and get there because it's worthwhile. And then I guess I want to end you with one of my own big traumas of life, and I think this is like the biggest trauma of our culture, and that's the work-life imbalance. When you're a kid, you just have fun. I have a twin brother. We used to tear shit up, you know, have Amigas, do graphics, music, you know, open up technology, you know, do stuff in our attic. Just have fun with it, right? Then when you turn 18, you know, someone says you need to do this thing you don't really want to do to pay this rent, right? That's a trauma. At least in my life it was. And it took me like 10 years of university, at least that's how it felt, until someone turned me on to entrepreneurship and say, hey, do you want to join this startup? We're trying to change publishing. And funny enough, I just worked as a publisher and I totally hated it. frankly, I got fired because publishing was broken, not because I was a bad publisher. But that's beautiful, and I think that's really what entrepreneurship, the promise, and the reason why you work so hard is because it's not work, seriously. Everything is life, and we just need to get around that and create a living for ourselves. I love that expression. And I guess I'm going to leave you because I've been almost through all my notes here, but final word of advice, and I think what really sums up this event is the ABCs of entrepreneurship, the ABC, always be cool. And I think this is a super cool event. And I'm really, so glad I visited Norway. And this is a cool guy, and his place is cool. And that's why you're all here on a Friday night, right? So thank you for being here. And go home and spread entrepreneurship in the Nordics, right? Cool, thanks.
Thank you so much for a great sum up. Thank you for all the interesting insights we've had in this session and the previous one. Really, really inspiring. I want to give all from this session and the other session one last big hand.
Yeah. Thank you, thank you.